Hi everybody, it's Colleen Pearl the Cool Crone, and welcome back to my channel. I just thought that I would come on and do a video because this week I'm not doing a lot of videos. I'm in the process of actually getting my studio ready to move it to another room in my house because my daughter's moving in with me. Well, one daughter lives with me, my oldest daughter is also moving in with me. And so we're just kind of shuffling the rooms around to make room for everybody, and in the next few weeks, it's going to be a little tricky for me to make videos, but I'm going to try. So, there were some headlines that I just couldn't ignore and I really wanted to comment on, so let's do some cards. And what I'm asking is, will there be a ceasefire this week? That is what the EU leaders were asking for, an immediate ceasefire to be followed also immediately by talks about peace, about stopping the war. So, what I have first is the Ten of Cups. So this is what everybody wants. This is what everybody's gathering to try to bring about. So there's agreement here between all of the leaders. And for those of you who have not become aware of this news item, leaders from the UK, France, Germany, and Poland met in Ukraine, in Kiev, with Zelensky to talk about this and to make sure that he was on board with a ceasefire and an end to the war. And of course Zelensky is on board with it. Of course he wants that to happen. But the problem is getting Putin to the table and getting Mr. Dumpy on board. Now Dumpy has been trying to facilitate a truce or a ceasefire or a peace, because he wants the Nobel Peace Prize, and none of his efforts have really gotten very far. But Putin came back and said that he wanted to have talks without a ceasefire in Istanbul on Thursday. That's 2 days from now. Is this just a delay tactic? We'll see. But what the guys, so Starmer, Macron, Tusk, and Merz are all on board with this. And when Starmer was making a statement to the press, to the BBC, after this meeting, he also mentioned Canada was on board with this and was supportive of this. And what they have said to Russia is that either you do this, or we will start heavily arming Ukraine, intimating that they would even put boots on the ground in Ukraine to stop Russia. And also, prior to doing that, they would implement even heavier sanctions than already exist. So apparently the sanctions are already pretty detrimental to Russia's economy. And so they're hoping that that's enough, but they're going to have to put boots on the ground. Putin's not going to buy any of this. So anyway, the Ten of Cups that comes up just tells me that it's not so much a happy we're all in this together. It's more the agreements between all of the other large nations. Now, in the news articles, you know, Putin is saying, oh, well, here's what I want. And what Putin wants is for Ukraine never to join NATO or the European Union, and for the West to stop giving them arms and to just be a pliant, obedient little country like Belarus. What Zelensky wants is the exact opposite. He wants to be in NATO, he wants to be a part of the EU, and if he's going to be at war, he wants to accept armaments from the West. Now, I haven't heard anything more about the mineral deal that Zelensky supposedly made with Trump, so don't ask me about that because I haven't read anything about it. I don't know anything about it. But for this, let's keep going with the cards. So the next card that we get, the card that literally is crossing this agreement, is the Knight of Swords. So this is going to be, the whole discussion, the peace talks, the so-called peace talks, and the fact that the European Union leaders are being much more aggressive than they ever have been. And they're stating things that are much more aggressive, like the sanctions and also boots on the ground in Ukraine, which is really kind of amazing. Now, in the middle of this is what's at the basis of the matter, is the Magician. They all want for this to end. It's bad for Europe. It's bad for UK and Canada. It's bad for the world because nobody trusts that Putin's going to stop at Ukraine. Personally, I don't think he has enough military and money to do anything more than he's doing in Ukraine, because mostly he's not staying in the war with people. He's staying in the war with drones and airstrikes and missiles. So, you know, that's the, by the way, that is the strategy of Ukraine too. They're doing a lot with drones as well, which, by the way, they invented all sorts of different types of drones on a very sophisticated level. So the world's going to want to buy all of their military stuff when this is all over. Then we have the King of Swords. So somebody in this group is the real deal maker. Now, unfortunately, Putin is a King of Swords because he's a Libra. But what are the other, and they are all gentlemen, so what are the other gentlemen? You know, Trump is a sword. He's a Gemini. He's a very key player. So this could be him. I'm just going to check really quick on the signs of the other key players. Okay, yeah, just Trump and Putin are the air signs, so either one of them in this reading could be the King of Swords, but I'm going to say it's Putin because the card next to him is the Seven of Pentacles, and he is waiting for things to happen. He's putting it off till Thursday, the talks, going to Istanbul. Let's see if he shows. We'll do a reading on that. And he is the one that is just waiting it out. A lot like Donald, this delay tactic seems to work well for him. So I'm going to leave those two cards turned up. And I'm sorry, my little face is going to... Let me put that one higher so you can at least see the top of the card to remember what it is. Okay. And then, so... So then we have Justice followed by the Five of Swords. So I do think that the group from the EU is going to hold true to their word. I do think that they're going to do the sanctions, and they'll give it a beat to see if the sanctions really hold. Here's the Justice card saying, yeah, we're going to do what we say. We're going to bring you to justice. And, you know, this is really what Putin is really afraid of. He's afraid of the truth. He's afraid of them taking advantage of his weakened position, because he is in actually a very weak position. He's just kind of a master manipulator, so he's trying to manipulate everything to make it seem like he really has the power, but I don't believe he has really any power. And what everybody else sees is that, you know, that these guys have done it. These guys have done a master stroke. They are bringing to the brink Dumpy and Putin to say once and for all, come on guys, are you guys trying to take over the world? Or Dumpy, are you going to stick with us in the EU and let us stop Putin? It's a big moment for Krasnov. You know, now he has to actually shit or get off the pot. Is he a Russian asset, or is he the leader of the free world? He wants to be the leader of the free world and get that Nobel Prize. So I don't know what he's going to do in this position. We'll do another reading on that. And what is Putin hoping for? He's hoping that they all cave, that they don't have the balls to go through with what they're threatening, and that he can just kind of futz his way through this with some sort of threats or delays or something. So he doesn't really have much in his arsenal to come back with, but he's going to try everything before he calls it a day. The final outcome is very interesting. It's the Queen of Pentacles. So the Queen of Pentacles, not the King. So I'm going to take this to mean that this is an inward action. So there's more covert actions taking place right now. The EU may be doing sanctions on Russia and not advertising the fact that they're putting boots on the ground in Ukraine, although they've already stated that that's what they're going to do, so it shouldn't be a huge surprise to anyone except Putin, because Putin's going to think, oh, they'll never do that. That's a bridge too far. They'll never go through with that. They'll never actually confront me. And if they did confront him, it would be over in 10 minutes. That's the truth. So, will there be a ceasefire? I don't think so. I think there'll be a meeting in Istanbul. Well, let's do a reading on that. Will there actually be a meeting in Istanbul? Let me not just jump to my own conclusions here. All right, so I'm going to pause the camera while I shuffle and lay out the cards, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I shuffled and I asked, what will actually happen in Istanbul, and will Putin be there? So right off the bat, I don't think Putin will be there. That's the thing. But what will happen there? So one thing is that we start off with the Seven of Swords crossed by the Eight of Wands. So the when a card is crossing like this, it is kind of half power, right? So the Seven of Swords we know as the sneaky Pete, the steal, the person taking off in the night with things that don't belong to them, right? So I think that Zelensky will show up. I think that there will be meetings with some of these leaders, and I think it will be obvious that what is happening is that Russia is not going to play ball. And this is forcing their hand to go into the sanctions. So I think the EU is going to have to do what they're threatening. They're going to have to impose more sanctions on Russia, and they probably are going to have to put military people on the ground in Ukraine. There's an awful lot of work that goes into all of this. The Ten of Wands, a lot of work, a heavy burden, a difficult burden. So, and even in this picture, you notice that the planet in the sky that you can see is Saturn. That's a lot of work. That's a lot of restriction, constraint, delay, burden, responsibility. So the people who called this meeting, they have to follow through on their actions. They cannot simply say, oh, well, let's think of something else. No, the something else they already put out on the table. Now they're going to have to do the something else. Now this card jumped out as I was cutting the cards, the Six of Swords. So this is a card meaning regularity and putting things right and bringing balance into an imbalanced situation. So I think overall, this is what the European leaders are trying to do. They don't like this war. It's an antiquated notion that one would try to take over another one's country in the 21st century. It's just not right. So that's what they're trying to rectify. In the position for the past, we have again the Justice card. So these EU leaders are really trying to bring Putin to justice. Guess who else is trying to bring Putin to justice? The ICC. And unfortunately, Turkey, and I will just read this to you. This is very interesting. Let me go back here. Turkey's relations with the International Criminal Court, the ICC. Even though Turkey, and this is the Republic of Turkey's website. This is what they say officially. Even though Turkey is not state party to the Rome Statute, whatever that means, I guess being part of the ICC, the activities of the ICC are closely followed, and the annual meetings of the Assembly of States Parties, which take place in The Hague or New York, are attended by our officials. Interesting. But so they're not, I guess, feeling under obligation to turn in Putin if he shows up. But of course he's going to send a surrogate, if anyone. And if he sends any surrogate, who knows what he's going to... It's just he's not going to be there. But they still may have a meeting. Now, what crowns the whole thing is the sun. So you know that a lot of stuff is going to be revealed. A lot of stuff is going to be revealed, which is why not so many things happening here, right? Because whoever is being exposed for what they're doing, i.e. Russia, it's no bueno for them. It's just not good. And there might even be a little bit of revelation about some of the countries just participating, maybe even Turkey. That's what I'm getting. In the future position, we have the Nine of Pentacles, right? Now, the Nine of Pentacles is, the bird in the gilded cage. The person feels so comfortable and taken care of, and they are not wanting for much. But that is the bird in the gilded cage. And so I think this is Ukraine, that they're going to get money and arms and help from people, but they're still trapped in a war. So this is not great for Zelensky, but it's progress, and he recognizes that. He even said when Putin didn't immediately go for the ceasefire, which who expected that he would just cave on the first request, Zelensky even said, well, I think it's promising that Putin wants to sit down and talk. Very diplomatic of him. All right. So, and one of the articles that I read also through the BBC was, you know, he probably doesn't want to piss off either Trump or Putin, so he's really walking the middle line. What are we afraid of here? We are afraid of the King of Pentacles. We are afraid of the money people. But let's think about who the King of Pentacles really is in this situation. Because both Keir Starmer and Donald Tusk of Poland are earth signs. So Poland has a lot to lose in this situation because they're the next stop for Putin, right? Once he conquers Ukraine, then he's going to go right on to Poland. And Germany's not far behind. So between Merz, who is Germany, and Tusk, who is Poland, I don't think they want to see this fail. I think they're really going to be pressing on it. Now, what everybody in the world is saying is, first of all, where's Kamala? But second of all, where are all the thinking people, the logical people, the legal people, the prosecutors? That why are we even doing this war thing? I mean, this can be fighting, swords can be fighting, but in this day and age, it's usually fighting with words, fighting with laws. But, you know, we're talking about Putin, so he can be pretty nasty. The thing is that look at the picture in the window of this card. That's the lovers. That's an agreement. That's a union. That's coming to an accord. And we even have the dove of peace down here in the corner. And is this a lily? Yeah, this is a lily. So we have a lot of peace symbols, even with the aggression of the swords and the aggression of the sharp fighting implement. But we also have words. We also have communication when we have agreement. So we want accord, and that's what people really want. So the only one standing outside this is Putin, and so they want to bring him to justice. That's how I'm seeing this. And then for hopes about this is the Hermit. Now the Hermit can be, let's reveal what's going on. Let's find out what's really, really going on. And I think this is going to be very telling because I think some of what's going to be revealed is something about Trump, and we'll do a reading on that too. Now I might have to do two separate videos because I don't want this to go over 30 minutes. So there might be two videos going up from this. The final outcome of this accord that they're going to have, this meeting that they're going to have in Istanbul, Five of Cups. It's just not, it's not going to be a happy ending, but there is going to be a decision. And I'm afraid that the decision is going to be that they have to make good on their threats, basically. So, with that said, so we looked at the ceasefire. No, definitely not. Is Putin? What will happen at the Istanbul meeting? We've looked at that, and now we're going to look at. Let's see. Will Europe immediately put on sanctions? Yeah, we might have to revisit that. I think what I'll do is I'll save the Trump questions for the second video. And right now I'm going to look at, is Putin trying to divide the U.S. and Russia? Yeah, I mean, is that what I mean, we know that's probably deep down his real desire because he doesn't want the West to send any more arms to Ukraine. And if the United States stops, then it's up to Europe. And, you know, Putin is an old man. He is not updating his thinking here when it comes to Europe because Europe has just spent the last 3 months just completely blowing up all of their military power and their military forces. They've purchased new weapons. They've, you know, I guess conscripted people or drafted people or opened it up for people to volunteer. So, you know, those countries, the EU countries, have really, really been stepping up their military forces and also strategizing collectively as if they are all one country as NATO, right? So under the umbrella of NATO, they have all been pooling their resources, strategizing together, understanding where they have weaknesses, beefing up where they have weaknesses, and they're ready for action. And I don't think Putin is paying attention. You know, he's buying his own bullshit that's coming over the state TV. So I'm going to pause the camera and we're going to do a reading just on Putin. Is he trying to divide the U.S. and Europe? Okay, so I've laid out the cards for Putin, and the question is he trying to divide the U.S. and Europe? And I think the obvious answer is yes, he absolutely is. However, these cards show a very interesting psychological profile of this man. So the first card is the Daughter of Grails, which is going to be the equivalent of the Page of Cups. But in this deck, this is a woman, a younger woman, who is very seductive, who uses her powers of seduction to not only get what she wants, but literally control other people. And this very well describes Putin. He will, and at this moment, when he's dealing with DJT, he is definitely going to be manipulating him to the max, trying to get him to do what he wants him to do. Now, the next card that crosses it is the Fool. So remember, when it's crossed, it's not at full strength. However, the Fool is also creative. This is a new journey for Putin. He's now kind of exposed. And anything that he says to Donald, unless he says, look, Donald, this has to be completely entre nous, you can't let anybody know this, probably the world is going to hear about the conversations because, you know, DJT can't keep his mouth shut. But with the Fool here, we also see that Putin is starting a new journey. Now, is this a journey where he's older, he's sick, he's acknowledging his frailties? Or is he already passed and this is just a Putin double who's saying, I don't know how to do this stuff, I can't do this. I mean, I don't really think that they're going to try to send a Putin double to the talks in Istanbul. I think it would be a Putin surrogate. But the details coming from whoever is pulling the strings, first they're going to focus on manipulating Trump in a big way. And this is going to be kind of a new thing. And what was coming to my mind as I was going through this whole reading was the Manchurian candidate. Is this the moment where they unleash the Manchurian candidate? I think it might be. So down here we have the Two of Skulls, and that's the same as the Two of Pentacles. And in this deck, the Two of Skulls, also a card about transformation as well as relationships. A transformation of oneself, because we have to understand what our motivations and values are. And so Putin is asking himself, you know, what am I trying to get here? And can I get it with DJT, or can I get it some other way? As long as DJT is valuable to him, he's physically safe. But as long as once he becomes not valuable to Putin, he's probably not physically safe. So I'm just throwing that out there. We also, as I was shuffling, this card jumped out, the Two of Grails, which is equivalent to the Two of Cups. And this is definitely representing the relationship, friendship, and otherwise that Putin and Trump have had over the years, literally decades since 1987. Now, the Four of Scepters is like the Four of Wands. And in this deck, it is not the happy harvest home and we're having a celebration or a wedding or whatever. This is about understanding who you are and where you've come from and accomplishing something, coming to a culmination of a project or a deal where you feel complete. And so that's in the past. So maybe DJT has felt complete, or maybe Putin has felt like it's complete. The whole thing with the Donald is kind of over and complete. And then we have the Star crowning it. And in this deck, the Star is saying, well, you have hopes. You can possibly accomplish your dream. Now, this is Putin's dream. So if Krasnos is the pinnacle of Putin's dream, to have him turn on the world, to turn on Europe, and to support Russia, then Putin's going to think that he's gotten it. He's going to believe that he's gotten it, and he's going to act on his He's going to use all of his KGB powers, if it is him indeed, but I'm sure all the doubles are KGB too, or former KGB. I'm sure they're all getting the same training so that they can, behave like him. This is his goal. This is his dream of a lifetime. And then we have the Ten of Grails, the Ten of Cups. So he definitely is going to get his goal. He's going to get Trump to do what he wants, or at least he's going to be able to talk to Trump and really explore that now is the time. Now, if Trump is kind of a Manchurian candidate, do they have some sort of, have they hypnotized him? Is there some sort of a key word that they say it and then Trump just acts any way that they want him to act? I don't know. But that is what could be in play. That is what I'm getting from these cards. And then we have the Prince of Knives. So this is like the Prince of Swords or the Knight of Swords. So this is someone who is not rushing in on a horse like they are in the Rider-Waite deck, but rather bellowing out in angst, not anger, in anxiety. Just like screaming into the wind and saying, "I want this." This is what Putin is afraid of, that Dumpy will not be able to deliver, and that he will fail, because he is a useful idiot, and he always has been known as a useful idiot. So there is some trepidation on Putin's part that even if he does, Manchurian candidate him or whatever, that Trump still won't be able to deliver, that he still won't succeed in the mission, because he's not an agent, he's just an asset. What do people around them think? Well, we have the Nine of Scepters here, which is like the Nine of Wands. And this is people seeing that, Putin's going to do what Putin's going to do. This is not a card of fulfillment. This is not a card that says, "Oh, you got the prize, you got everything you wanted." But this is also a card of tremendous inner strength and flexibility. So here we have Putin's ability to turn on a dime and change the situation to his benefit. So he may very well, even though Trumpy fails, he may still get what he wants. And then we have his hopes dashed, the Hanged Man. So things will come to a standstill. Now, the Hanged Man for Putin may mean he has to accept the inevitable. He has to see things in a different light. And that's not going to be fun for him. He's going to be really disappointed and angry and dangerous at that point. And he's dangerous now, but he's going to be even more dangerous at that point, because at that moment he will have nothing to lose. And in fact, he will come and have his tower moment. Things will not be great for him. He will have an undoing. He will have a downfall. He will have there will be a revelation that the world will see what is really going on with him, which is horrible. So the world may actually see that Russia is just a shadow of itself, that it has no money, that it has no economy, that it has no military really, and it has nothing to really give. And why were we all afraid of this country for so long when they really didn't have anything except for this man with his sheer will pushing it towards a seeming world domination? It seemed like that's what they were after, but they couldn't possibly do that, really, I think. But anyway, so this is really bad. This is not really good. This is really bad. Putin is trying to divide the U.S. and Europe, and the question is, will Dumpy go with his ego and go for the "I'm going to win the Nobel Prize," or will he act as Krasnov and be loyal to his master, who he has served for, 30 years? Which will it be? 30 years? 17. Oh, almost 40 years. Jesus. In 2 years, it'll be 40 years. So that's a long time. We don't know. Okay, so I have two readings that I want to do on Donald, and one on the European leaders and what they're going to do. I'll put that in a second video. Thank you so much for watching and tuning in. I really appreciate it. Please make sure that you're subscribed subscribe, subscribe, subscribe. YouTube is doing some weird shit, and who knows what's going on with that. I love your comments. I read all of them, even if it's 2 weeks later. It takes me a while. I do work full time, so I have a lot going on. And my daughters are moving back in. So, well, one of my daughters is moving back in. One of my daughters already lives here. So there's a lot going on for me right now, but I don't want to leave you hanging. So this is what I'm doing. I'll see you guys later. Bye.